His attorney leaned in and murmured 5 words, so quiet I didn't catch them, but I saw the effect immediately. Vincent Mercer's face drained of color. Not a little pale. Not slightly nervous. This was full-body panic, like someone had pulled the floor out from under him. His fingers started to tremble, and the papers he'd been so eager to sign fluttered like they were alive. And me. For the first time in 3 years I let myself smile. Not a big smile. Not a victory grin. Just a tiny controlled curve of my mouth that said, "Finally. You're seeing what I've been seeing. But I'm skipping ahead. You need the whole picture because everyone thought I'd cracked. Everyone thought I'd fallen apart. And that misunderstanding was the smartest thing that ever happened to me. My name is Alexis Dunst. I'm 34. And 3 months ago, after 15 years of marriage, I became Vincent Mercer's soon-to-be ex-wife. 15 years. That's longer than most people keep a New Year's resolution. Longer than most men like Vincent stay satisfied. And definitely longer than my patience should have lasted, if patience was all this was. I've always been stubborn. I come by it honestly. My grandmother used to say, "A woman doesn't need permission to be prepared." I met Vincent when I was 17. I'd finished high school early, not because I was some gifted prodigy, but because I was practical, restless, and desperate to escape my parents' house. I wanted independence more than I wanted comfort. I took the first real job I could. File clerk at Henderson & Price, a law firm that smelled like paper, toner, and expensive cologne. Minimum wage, maximum paper cuts. But it was mine. By 18 I was a legal assistant. I was good at details, good at numbers, good at keeping my mouth shut and my eyes open, the exact combination that teaches you how the world really works. I watched people smile through lies, sign away futures, and pretend contracts were just paperwork. Then Vincent walked into my life at a client event. He was 24, charismatic, ambitious, dressed like he belonged in every room he entered. He talked about building a real estate empire like it was already under construction, like success was waiting in the driveway with its engine running. He asked what I did. "I make sure people don't miss deadlines," I said. He laughed like I'd said something adorable. "Perfect," he said. "A man like me needs that." At the time it sounded like flirtation. Now I recognize it as a forecast. We married when I was 19. Our son Tyler was born when I was 20. I stayed part-time at the firm for a while, juggling diapers, deadlines, and my own retirement contributions. My grandmother drilled one rule into my head. Have your own money. Not secret money, she'd correct, tapping my forehead with a knuckle. Just yours. Something nobody can take. At 23, Vincent's business finally took off. That's what he called it. He asked me to leave the law firm and work for him full-time. "I need someone I can trust," he said. "Someone who understands the moving pieces." So I became his unpaid infrastructure, bookkeeper, office manager, contractor wrangler, client whisperer, model home decorator, marketing coordinator, event planner, the person who caught every dropped ball before it rolled off the table. I did all of it while raising Tyler, keeping the household stable, and making sure Vincent always had the life he wanted. Clean, organized, impressive. My official title was wife. My real title was everything that made him look like a genius. For 11 years, I poured myself into building Vincent's dream. And for 11 years, he accepted the applause like it belonged solely to him. At industry events, he was the visionary, the builder, the future. I was the arm candy who kept the home running. Somewhere along the way, he started rewriting history in real time. He began making decisions without telling me. Staying late at work. Criticizing little things. How I dressed, how I cooked, how I didn't push myself. The irony was so sharp I could have cut glass with it. I ran his entire back end for free, raised his son, protected his calendar, and somehow I wasn't ambitious enough. Then, 3 months ago, he detonated my life like it was a business transaction. It was a Tuesday. I was making dinner, his favorite, because apparently I enjoy doing thankless labor with extra seasoning. Vincent sat down at the kitchen table with a look that wasn't sad or guilty. It was managerial. "I want a divorce," he said. Then without blinking. "And I want the house, the cars, the business, everything." He paused like he was being generous. "You can keep Tyler. Keep Tyler." Like our 15-year-old son was a takeout container he didn't want to carry. I stared at him, waiting for emotion to arrive. It never did. That night I learned something important. Vincent didn't end marriages. He liquidated them. What I didn't know in that moment, what I wouldn't confirm until later, was that Vincent had been building this exit strategy for months. He already had a lawyer, Harold Whitfield. Expensive. Experienced. The kind who smiles while he signs papers that ruin people. The next day, Vincent's mother arrived. Lorraine Mercer. Perfect hair. Perfect posture. Perfectly rehearsed sympathy. She patted my hand and said, "You should have tried harder to keep him happy. Men have needs, dear." Lorraine dispensing marriage advice was rich, considering her husband spent 7 days a week golfing, less as a hobby and more as an evacuation plan. Within a week, Vincent had taken control of everything. The guest room became my new reality. My closet shrank from a walk-in to 2 cramped sections, what he allowed me to keep. The message wasn't subtle. You're already gone. You just haven't moved your body out yet. 2 weeks in, he started bringing her around. Brittany Sawyer. 27. Worked at his company. Instagram perfect and smugly comfortable in other people's spaces. She walked into my kitchen like she owned the air. Put on my apron, my grandmother's apron, then made smoothies in my blender like she was auditioning to replace me. Vincent paraded her openly. Sat with her on my couch. Ate off my plates. Wrapped his arm around her in front of me like I was furniture. Humiliation became routine. First he canceled my personal card. We need to separate finances. Then the joint. Then the suggestion that I should find somewhere else to stay while they worked things out. My own home, and I was being gently pushed out of it. Lorraine came to help me pack. Which meant she went through my belongings and decided what I deserved. Old clothes. Fine. Family photos. Some. Anything valuable. Off limits. And she put my life into garbage bags. Not boxes. Garbage bags. Like I was trash. Through all of this, I had one person I thought I could trust. Diane Holloway. We'd been friends since high school, 20 years of shared life. She called constantly, brought wine, listened to me cry, told me I deserved better. But something felt wrong, small things at first. Vincent seemed to know my thoughts before I'd spoken them out loud. If I mentioned to Diane that I might fight for the house, Tyler would come home the next day saying Dad told him it wouldn't work. If I said I was looking at apartments in a certain neighborhood, Vincent would casually mock that area as too expensive for me. Then the truth snapped into focus. Diane wasn't just my friend. She was his antenna. Looking back, I should have seen it for years, the way Diane lit up when Vincent entered a room, how she laughed too hard at his jokes, how she always asked about him first. How's Vincent? Is he okay? How's his business? She'd been carrying a torch for my husband for 15 years. And Vincent, who collected admiration like some people collect watches, knew exactly how to use her. My best friend had sold me out for a handful of compliments and the fantasy of being chosen next. And the worst pain in all of it. Tyler. My son watched everything. The girlfriend. The garbage bags. The way his father spoke about me like I was the obstacle to everyone being happy. Vincent poisoned him slowly, skillfully. Your mom is making this difficult. I'm trying to be fair. She's dragging it out. Tyler didn't hate me. That would have been easier. He just drifted. Confused. Distant. Watching your child hesitate around you, like you've become unsafe. That's a wound that bleeds quietly. I hired a lawyer. Nina Castellano. 52. Sharp, blunt, allergic to nonsense. She reviewed what Vincent was doing and said, "You helped build this business. You're entitled to half of everything. We fight." I looked at her and asked, "What if I don't want to fight?" She stared like I'd spoken in code. She thought I was broken. She had no idea. Because 3 years earlier, I'd found something buried inside Vincent's numbers, something that turned his empire into a ticking bomb. And I had been preparing ever since. Before we go further, don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this, because the next part is where the chessboard becomes visible. And comment below what you would have done if your spouse said, "I'll take the assets, you keep the child." Because that sentence tells you everything about a person. 3 years before Vincent asked for a divorce, I was doing what I always did. Cleaning up behind him. He was working late. The company books needed reconciling. Vendors were calling. Accounts had to line up because if they didn't, clients got nervous, contractors got angry, and Vincent's world started to wobble. I noticed a transfer to an account I didn't recognize. Then another. Then a third. Pattern is never just a pattern. It's a confession wearing a spreadsheet. I stayed up until 3 in the morning following the trail. I expected to find an explanation, an investment account, a construction escrow, something boring. Instead, I found the truth. Vincent had been taking loans against everything we owned. The house, our big admired house, had 3 mortgages. The original. Then a second. Then a third. Total owed. Roughly $1. $1 million. And the house wasn't worth that. Not even close. Market value. About $850,000. We weren't homeowners. We were renters with better curtains and catastrophic debt. The business was worse. Max credit lines. Back taxes. Vendor balances. Equipment loans. The company Vincent bragged about at parties was drowning in almost $500,000 of obligations. Even the cars weren't ours. Leases. Balloon payments. Fancy monthly drains dressed up like status. At 3 in the morning, sitting at my kitchen table surrounded by printouts, I did the math. Debt. About $1. $9 million. Real assets. Maybe $1. $6 million, and that was optimistic. We were underwater. And Vincent had been smiling through it. So where did the money go? I kept digging for weeks. The answers came in ugly pieces. Crypto investments that vanished. Gambling losses disguised as business travel. A secret apartment with rent and furniture paid quietly. Watches. Suits. Trips I was never invited on. Lifestyle spending that never reached our home. Vincent wasn't building an empire. He was building a stage set, beautiful from the street, hollow behind the walls. My first instinct was to confront him. Scream. Cry. Demand. Threaten. But I knew Vincent. I'd watched him operate for years. If I confronted him, he'd do what he always did. Explain, deflect, charm, then blame. And if he suspected I knew the truth, he'd try to reach for the only thing I had that was real. Because I did have something real. My own retirement from my law firm years, about $180,000 by then. And my grandmother's inheritance, $340,000, explicitly written for me alone. I never commingled it. Never paid household bills with it. Never let it touch Vincent's world. Total. About $520,000, legally separate. So I did not confront him. I protected Tyler. I worked with my uncle, a retired accountant, and created an irrevocable trust in Tyler's name. My retirement and inheritance went into it. No loopholes. No Vincent. No marital asset arguments. Then I documented everything. Every mortgage. Every loan. Every hidden transfer. Copies at my sister's. Copies in a safe deposit box. Copies on an encrypted drive. And then I waited. Because men like Vincent always leave. They get bored. They get greedy. They get inspired by someone younger who doesn't know the full story. And when they leave, they want everything. That's the thing about narcissistic men. They don't just exit. They punish. So when Vincent finally sat at our table and said, "I'll take the assets, you keep the kid," I almost laughed. He thought he was demanding treasure. He was demanding a sinking ship. Back in the present, after I moved into the small apartment with Tyler, I sat across from Nina and placed 3 binders on her desk. She read in silence for nearly an hour. When she finally looked up, her expression had changed completely. "You've known for 3 years," she said. "I was waiting," I replied. "I knew he'd do this eventually." Nina leaned back, slow, careful. The pity was gone. "What do you want?" she asked. I said the sentence that decided everything. "I want him to win." Nina blinked. I continued calm. "He wants the house, the business, the cars. Let him have them. But the liabilities go with them. Every mortgage. Every loan. Every lease. All of it becomes his problem." Nina's mouth tightened into something like admiration. "And your separate funds. Protected. Already. Tyler is safe." For a long moment, Nina just stared at me like she'd misjudged the entire room. Then she smiled, slow, sharp. "Mrs. Dunst," she said, "I owe you an apology. I thought you were giving up." I smiled back. "Everyone thinks that," I said. That's the point. The next months became performance. I showed up to mediation looking exhausted. Voice soft. Eyes red. The perfect portrait of a woman who had lost her spine. I asked for so little the mediator looked uncomfortable. Just enough to start over, I said. I don't want to tear the family apart. I requested $50,000, my personal belongings and shared custody. Vincent agreed immediately. He looked at me with something like pity, like he was merciful for discarding me gently. Lorraine bragged to anyone who would listen. Vincent is keeping everything. That woman didn't get a dime. Vincent bought himself a new watch. $15,000. He wore it in front of me like a trophy. And Brittany, God bless her ignorance, started redecorating the house. New furniture. New art. She painted my kitchen gray. Gray. I spent weeks choosing the original color, and she painted over it like I was never there. Diane kept calling, fishing for information with fake concern. I played along, voice cracking at the right moments. I can't fight anymore, I'd say. And like clockwork, Vincent's confidence grew. He declined Harold's recommendation for an audit. Signed a waiver without reading. Because Brittany wanted it finalized. Because he wanted it finalized. Because he believed paper was just paper. And the night before court, Vincent texted me, "Thanks for not making this ugly." I stared at that message for a long time. 15 years of work, and he thanked me for being convenient. I replied, "I just want what's best for Tyler." And I meant it. Because what was best for Tyler was a father who would finally face consequences, without being able to claw back into my life through money. Before we continue, if you're enjoying this story, give it a like. Tells the algorithm you want more payoffs like this. And comment below, would you have played it patient like Alexis, or would you have confronted him the minute you saw the debt? Because Thursday morning was coming. And Thursday morning was where Vincent's win would become his worst day. Courtroom for B was cold in that way older buildings are. Old wood, stale air, quiet tension that hangs like dust. Vincent arrived first, of course. Charcoal suit. Perfect hair. That new watch catching light when he shook Harold Whitfield's hand. He looked like a man closing a deal. Brittany waited outside the courtroom doors, scrolling her phone, designer bag at her elbow. She wasn't allowed inside, but she wanted to be close enough to taste victory. Lorraine sat in the gallery like a queen watching peasants settle disputes. When I entered, she gave me a small smile, the kind that says, "You lost and I enjoyed it." I looked exactly how Vincent needed me to look. Tired, defeated, done. Simple navy dress, hair pulled back, no jewelry. A woman with nothing left. Judge Patricia Holden took the bench, silver hair, reading glasses, 30 years of seeing every lie couples tell in divorce court. Mercer versus Mercer, she said. Final dissolution hearing.